Well, you weren't a Marine, but the inner Boy Scout. All righty, welcome back from the break. We are ready to meet our next presenter today. This is a co-worker of mine, so I'm very excited about this. A proud Virginia boy, Matthew Veland is a passionate and energetic financial planner. His goal is to positively impact the lives of people by helping them build confidence around the difficult financial decisions in their lives. As part of the UVA member wealth management team, he serves us in the Orange and Warrenton locations. Matthew also serves on the boards of several nonprofit organizations focused on developing and encouraging professional development, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship, primarily in the Philippine American community. While not at work or in the community, Matthew enjoys time at home with his wife, raising their newborn son and their 2 pets. Welcome, Matthew!
Thanks, Amelia. So I don't much like standing on the stages. I much prefer to be on the same level as you all. I think it keeps you all more engaged. And I think we really need the engagement. I mean, we're all getting guidance after that. So I'm glad we took a longer break, and I'm glad that you all are here. You know, in crafting this presentation, you know, as Tim mentioned, we have a lot that we have to get through compliance, right? And the presentation that we have prepared, it's a little bit geared more towards a different group of people than we actually have here. So I'm going to do my best to bend the presentation that will continue, or hopefully still provide value to you, even though you are not contractors that are looking to exit your business right now, right? I think all day I've been trying to think, okay, well, let me pivot this into maybe this is something that you can take into your personal financial planning journey, or for those of you that are looking to pivot into entrepreneurship, something that you can take with you as well. So when people think about exiting your business, right, or transition planning, or really any sort of detailed long-term financial planning, right? In crafting this, I was thinking of TV shows. Who here, anybody watch Succession, maybe? Okay, there we go, about half the room. In the season they're in, right? So we have that show. What about Arrested Development, a little bit older of a television show? Right. What about Suits, maybe? Suits is another, okay, all right, 3 for 3, I like it. Let's see, I'm gonna try one more. Maybe The Firm, Boston Legal, some of these like corporate politics. I'm just now rewatching Boston Legal, and I'm going to be kind of loose with the references because, as I mentioned, the presentation is a little bit different than we had planned for. Additionally, I told John he could use the video of me no matter what, but because of compliance, cannot use anything that I'm saying verbally. So when I think of those TV shows, I think about either dramedies, comedies of families that fail to successfully plan for the transition to business, right? So again, all of you are transitioning into or out of business ownership or are having a business passed down to you by your parents. But again, you can think of it as a transition in your financial planning picture. Slide. This is a compliance-related disclosure that all of our presentations contain. You can read it or not. Slide. So, in giving this presentation in the past, what we've done is before we reveal the slide, we have people shout out, what percentage of businesses do you think go through the second, go through the third, go through the fourth generations, right? And the first time I saw these numbers, I was like, that can't be right. I mean, imagine this, right? What's the chance that any one of your businesses, or a business that you pivot into, or a business that you're looking at buying, what are the chances that successfully passes several generations? So, say I have Veland Wealth Management, for example. My great-grandkids, there's a 3% chance that firm is still alive at that time, right? So, given these numbers, I don't want you to think, how do I make sure that I can effectively pass down or transition my business to my kids? I want you to be aware of the options. Additionally, like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about your overall financial picture. It might as well have thrown up there what percentage of people retire with the assets that they need. What percentage of people get into difficult financial straits to prepare, right? It's always low numbers to slide. So, in thinking, why do people fail, right? Or maybe the inverse of that is, what can we do to help people succeed? It's really committing to a written plan. I see people here that are in fitness. I see people here that are in video production, pushing people to action, right, in any way. That's really what it does. I often, and I'm sure Tim says the same things, hello? That really we are in the business of pushing people to act. We don't get paid to pick index funds. You can Google index funds, right? You study with John on how to Google things properly. You can find index funds on the internet. What we get paid to do is help you manage your own behavior, right? And think long-term with your strategy. Because at the end of the day, that's a lot harder than Google. That is what I think we get paid for, right? And you look at this, how many of you have thought, oh, this is my plan going to be moving forward, going to retirement. This is how much I need to save. This is what I need to do with my business, for example, right? But how many of you have written it down? If we look at this study, right, Massachusetts Business Owner Perspective Study 2022 was an internal study we did with business owners. 92% have not completed a written succession plan. No wonder we have so many dramedies, comedies, and dramas, right, about failure to successfully plan for businesses. And again, if you don't own a business at this time, just think, instead of any one of these shocking numbers is about business transference of ownership, think instead it's about successfully planning for retirement or any sort of major financial issue that comes to your lives, right? Sometimes people come to me and their kid's 17 and they're like, hey, I want to start saving for my kid's college. What do I do? Or, I had a cousin that in 2022 or 2020 when the market dropped, he cashed out his TSP, which, I'm jealous of anyone that had access to TSP, right? He says, Matt, what do? I say, take all the money that you liquidated. I want you to invest in a time machine company, buy the time machine that comes out, and then meet with me before you made that decision, right? Because that's really all I can do at that point. So really what we're going to talk about is successful planning requires committing to and writing down a lot of these things we want to do, right? So written succession plan is key. A buy-sell agreement is something we'll talk about a little bit later. We might not get too in-depth into some of these business owner things because, again, of the nature of the audience here. And I want to make sure that those of you that are here, I want to make sure you still derive value from this presentation because I am personally glad that you're here. Slide. So when Tim and I ask people, oh, have you committed to a financial plan? Have you met with someone? What's your plan for retirement? I mean, when my wife and I, when we got married, we even did a little bit of financial planning around, how we're going to afford certain things, as I'm sure you all do, right? But we all hear these reasons or give these reasons why we don't want to do anything, right? Maybe it's starting a business succession plan, or maybe it's starting to work out, or whatever it is, right? I'm sure all of you in some way have heard this from someone, or you have said it yourself. I don't have the extra money. I don't know where to go for help. It's an uncomfortable conversation, right? And there's nothing inherently wrong with people for not having these conversations, but I like to think of it as our mission is forcing people to have these conversations, right? My business coach says, when I first started in this line of work, I felt like I was like a dirty salesman, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to sell these mutual funds, I'm going to sell this insurance, right? And as I developed and deepened my financial planning practice, I spoke with my business coach and said, Matt, why do you feel so guilty, right? You are the doctor, they are the patient. You are prescribing the medication they need to change their lives. And if you don't believe that, get out of business. If you believe it, then think that it's not about getting people to buy your stuff. It's about convincing people to get out of their own way, right? So a lot of these things that we hear when it comes to any sort of planning financially, not just when it comes to transition planning. Slide. So, like I said, most of you have thought of it, right? You've thought about getting into entrepreneurship. You've thought about starting a clothing line. You've thought about doing some succession planning. And by the way, quick side note, our former general agent, Kevin Posh, he really hammered home with us, all of us agents. He said, make sure your succession plan is in effect and is written down, because if not, your clients are not going to believe you, and they're not going to do what you say. If they ask you, you say, oh, I don't have a plan in place, right? So you can see various statistics on here. There's no need to go through each one of them. Basically, the point of this is that everybody's thought about something, but there's a difference between thinking about it and really kind of committing things to paper, right? And sometimes that's as easy as not even meeting with an attorney, just having something written on paper, right? And most people have not even done that, even if they've thought about it. Slide. So you can click one more time for the mass mutual definition, I think. Yeah, so this top definition is succession planning, and again, right, not all of your transition in and out of entrepreneurship. But when we think about planning, the process of planning is when the business owner decides to sit down to leadership role in business, right? So our more detailed definition, of course, right, to distinguish ourselves, is developing a written plan. As we mentioned, that's kind of the key. When the business owner decides or is forced to step down from the leadership ownership role in the business due to voluntary and involuntary departure, right? So, a lot of times things happen that you don't plan for, right? I think to an extent, that's kind of what we're experiencing today, right? I mean, John had something as personal like did yesterday, right? And I think that people think, what is this going to cost me? And I like to tell them, how much money is this going to save you, right? Because at the end of the day, I hope you never need one of these things. I hope you decide to leave your business or enter your business or whatever it is, and you never have a very difficult decision, right? Basically, it was forced on me. I'll give you an example from non-business owner world, right? So I was working with this client that a friend had referred me to, and she had a trust from her parents, $4 million in the trust. She was 26 years old. The trust was going to start paying out at 30, 35, and 40 is what the trust was set up to do, to start dispersing money to her, right? I said, okay, let's enter into a fiduciary fee-based planning relationship, which is what we did, because she wanted to make sure we were fiduciaries. I wanted to make sure I was a fiduciary, right? It's $4 million, right? So the first thing I did was I said, let's look at your beneficiary designations, right? What happens, because this trust has been in existence for 10 years. She says, okay, sure. We take a look at the trust. The trust was set up when she was 16. The beneficiary was her 16-year-old high school boyfriend. I said, are you still with this guy? She said, no. I said, do you ever talk to this guy? She said, no. I said, so if something happens to you, $4 million of your parents' dollars is going to go to this guy, your ex-boyfriend from high school, is that right? And she said, yeah, I think you need to change that to trust, right? So, again, outside of business owner world, you hear these crazy stories, and I think doctors and nurses, they take all the credit for the most interesting stories. I think, in financial services, we have some pretty interesting stories of our own, right? So really, it's about not just developing this plan in case something happens, but also, as you'll see later slides, revisiting it from time to time, just like you would with the wealth slide. So there are 6 parts of a good succession plan. Again, I'm not going to go crazy in depth with all of these, right? But if you are a business owner, or if you are looking to buy a business, I would look at the succession plan and I would see what the goals are. That's pretty self-explanatory. The successor, or to whom the ownership equity passes, right? I would look at the ownership itself, and what the structure of the business is. I would look at the management, right? Because even if the equity does pass to someone, you don't know what the management looks like, or you will need to know. Then we have how it's going to be transferred to, and then of course the finances. And detailed business valuations, that's not what we do. We bring in someone else to do that. We bring in a CPA, we introduce you to the broker, we help advise on the process in general. I like to explain to people that if you are running an NFL team, or an NBA team, or pick your sport, right? That you are the owner. We are the general manager. We help appoint a lot of staff, right? So you own the team, it's your decision, but we run a lot of the day-to-day for you. That way you don't have to. Slide. Now let's see this one. So, when I am talking to people about just the personal side of things, I say, okay, what percentage of you think you're going to retire early? So let me ask you that. What percentage of you think you're going to retire early? You want to raise your hand if you think you're going to retire early. What does retiring early mean? What age?
A couple years.
A couple years?
By 47.
So 25? Is that what you?
Yes.
25, okay. What else for early retirement? What do we got?
Age-wise?
Age-wise, yeah.
40.
40? Okay.
45.
45, okay. Some ambitious folks in here, right? So full retirement at this time is 67. So retiring early at 40, 45 would of course shave 20, 25 years of your working life off, which is a very ambitious goal. Or in Amelia's case, 42 years, right? So very ambitious goal, right? But what, the question I like to ask is, what percentage of you think you're going to die one day, right? 100% of you, right? I don't even need to wait for you on that, right? So, and it's a very extreme example, right? But the point of this is that you can take small steps, you can set up written documents, and then you don't have to worry about it. Because the worst thing is when someone has to make that decision for you. The worst thing is, and on the personal side, right? The worst thing is your assets going to probate because you didn't have things properly designated, you didn't have a trust set in place, and some hungover judge, Matt Galen, on Monday morning, here's the case and gives all of your assets to Tim Morris, who's your long-lost cousin, right? And you don't want that. So on the business side of things, just like on the personal side, 100% of business owners will exit the business. 100%. So if you're looking to pick up a business, know that there's great opportunity. If you're looking to sell, or if you own a business, know that you've got to have a plan in place. Again, we're saying a lot of the same thing over and over again. Slide. So I will take a little bit of time here because I do know that we do have at least one person that is involved in family business, for whom this would be very important, and a couple that are thinking of pivoting into businesses, right? And a lot of this you may be familiar with, but it is also helpful just to see what these options are, right? So these 6 ways to exit a business, we have private equity, we have ESOP, or employee stock ownership plan, gifting, liquidation, management inside buyer, or selling to an outside buyer. Now, I've explained every single one of these things, but if you don't have that kind of time, just know that you can sell outside, you can sell inside, and different variations of both. I think is the best way to kind of explain it. And a lot of times with family businesses, what we see is, on the top right, we see gifting. That's kind of the intention that the parent has when they pass on the business. Unfortunately, a lot of times what we see, and how many of you have seen the movie Inception? It's one of my favorite films, right? So what happens at the end of Inception? What does the business owner, the son, what does he do? He wakes up, he wakes up from the dream, and then he's like, I think I'm gonna what? What does he do at the end? Sell the business. He decides to liquidate the business because Leonardo DiCaprio and crew have successfully convinced him to break apart his father's empire, right? So sometimes you see that, and we're throwing up all these numbers to scare you. Oh, X number, amount of business owners don't do this or that. But sometimes the kids just want to liquidate the business because they don't want to be in the same industry that their parents were, right? So it's not all that, right? Slide. So we have some pros and cons of each. I don't know that this will be super helpful to all of you. One of the things, if we can skip, I do want to talk about one or two that I think are more applicable. Now, most people are not going to spend time on the slide. Yeah, gifting. Again, this is what I think you're going to see a lot of times, either in acquiring or, when you go to sell, right? You see this a lot. Gifting shares of the business to family members over a period of time in order to transition ownership. Dad owns the business. Mom owns the business. They don't want to give the business to the kids, right? You see it all the time in every culture, in every market. You see it all the time, right? It can create family legacy, which sounds really good, but owners never truly exit. And if they're your parents, my dad's an accountant, my mom's an engineer. I could never do these things, right? My mom was very disappointed in how bad my Asian was when I brought home my first BMAC, right? It was terrible. But I could never be an engineer. I could never be an accountant like my dad. They love their jobs, and I love them for it. But I could never do that, right? And so if they had tried to push that on me, it would have created even more friction than there already was, right? So this is almost always the plan, right? But this isn't necessarily what we're selling. Slide. In the abstract, we can kind of talk about this because I think this is something that some of you might be looking at, selling to an outside buyer. A lot of times what I've seen is in these specific industries, someone owns, for example, a roofing company. No, let's not use that example. Someone owns an HVAC business, right? They know who their competitors are. They're friendly competitors with each other. One of them is looking to retire at 67. He wants to sell to a competitor, right? Navigating that process, right? Typically, you get a more fair transaction if you were to do something else. And I've seen so many times after the competitor sees all the books, let's say all the numbers, they back out, right? Either because they take that information and unknowingly become better than their competitor, or sometimes they don't like how the books look and then they back out, right? So each one of these options has pros and cons, and I would say that our role in all that is helping advise you on that process, no matter which way it goes. Slide. So a lot of people think they can just wake up one morning and sell the business, right? And I don't know what the personal financial planning analogy would be, right? They just wake up one day, decide at 40 they're going to retire, right? So on the business owner side of things, look at how many try to exit versus how many are going to sell at the desired price, right? So you decide you want to sell your business or you want to buy a business. You go to the broker, you try to haggle down the price or haggle up the price that you're looking to sell, right? Less than 10% of the time, folks walk away happy. Right. And a lot of times it's because there's not a business succession plan in place. The background financials aren't good, the business owners are too busy working. They work in the business, they don't work on the business, right? They're about growing the business and everything, they don't sit down and work out the numbers. You'd be surprised, and the people I've talked to, right? Even basic business owner statistics where they don't have $25,000 saved for retirement and they're going to retire next year. They're like, I'm just going to sell the business and that's going to be it, right? So again, translating that into the personal world, right? I have buddies in tech that, because they're in tech, they're smarter than me, right? They're smarter than me. And maybe they are, right? Maybe they wrote ChatGPT, I don't know, right? But the whole point is that they think that they can just sell their equity one day and retire, right? And I said, so 90% of your net worth is in Apple stock, right? True, so everybody does this. And he said, yeah. And I said, Apple has done phenomenally in the past 20 years. Phenomenally, right? And he said, I said, well, how's it going to do the next 20 years? He said, I'd probably still fine. I said, okay, so when you retire in 20 years, your retirement plan is Apple stock will probably still be fine, and that's 90% of the assets with which I would like to retire. That cannot be your financial plan. Of course, sometimes we'll be able to convince them, and sometimes again, they, this thing. And or maybe they are smart, right? But I just wanted to illustrate that what we think is going to end up happening when it ends up happening sometimes very different. And we spend all this time trying to grow our businesses, trying to sell, try to really scale up. But if you don't spend the time planning out a transition or some of these background things like retirement, it just gets away from you, right? Slide. Sometimes you see this too, where one of the business partners is looking to exit, and then they sell their portion of the business to the other partner. I think a little bit later in this we get into buy-sell agreements, but I don't want to spend too much time here. Let's move on. I want to get to the stuff that's really going to stick with people. Yeah, okay. So liquidation, as I mentioned, I always like to think of it as the end of inception, right? So you see the breakup and the sale of the business assets for cash. They start other portions, they do something else, right? And this is totally fine, but again, the point of the presentation is you have to have a ready plan. Because if you don't, this decision's going to come at you too fast, you're not going to be able to make it, or someone's going to have to take it for you, which you're not going to like. That slide. So here are just some questions, just for those of you that do business, and I'm not going to answer them for you, but I really just want you to think about it. Would you be all right with a child running your business? No, sorry, not a child, your child running your business, or your spouse, right? How many of your spouses would gladly take over your business? My wife is a county librarian, and she loves it. She loves the 9 to 5. She hates talking to people. She's a complete introvert, and she would not be. She told me, she says, hey, your job is way too intimidating. I said, I think your job is intimidating. You got to deal with patrons all day long, right? And you just, right? So some other questions. Would those that inherit your business, a family member, would they be liable for your debts? Do they have executive experience? Would profits decline? How would that impact other sales opportunities that you're looking at? And would key employees consider you? Right? So any of these things, you feel like yes, maybe an answer, a forced liquidation might be coming your way. Slide. So, as I mentioned, right, when we look at the valuation of a business, and this applies to several groups that you get, right? A lot of the time when the business owner looks to evaluate their own assets, they're off by 59% one way or the other. What? Oh, you have experience? Yeah.
Business owners have no clue what their business is worth.
Yeah, exactly, right? So when they do turn to someone, right, that's non-family, 58% of the time they turn to someone like us, 41% of the time they look at CPA, 36% of the time M&A consultant, and 33% valuation service tip, right? So something else I encourage business owners to take a look at is an active valuation if you're not looking to sell. Because again, the point of this is we want to prepare for the day that we hope never comes, right? Because if it does, we might be screwed, completely screwed. We've seen it. It's not great. Slide. So one of the things I want to highlight up here is not every bullet here, right? But you want to know, look at the second bullet under one. Know the business has value in the marketplace. Again, getting an accurate valuation every couple of years, typically I would say 3 years, is a great way to have an idea of where you are. And of course, if you're lucky enough, look at bullet number 3, if you are lucky enough to know that you're getting ready to sell, then you can start preparing it for sale. And needs, right, and those are the things we'd love to have. The needs are the things you absolutely need to have, are buy-sell agreements. So, for those of you, again, that are looking to buy, or one day might sell, can anybody tell me what a buy-sell agreement is, or maybe have one in place? Anybody? No? Okay. So, there are two business owners. John and I own a company. Let's call it the Victoria Wheelan Laser Company, right? All right, so one day, I pass away early. What happens to my shares? Who knows, right? If I were in a financial plan, maybe I have everything going to my wife, right? Typical I love you woman, the partner gets everything. My wife, again, does not like the corporate world. She really loves the public world. She loves interacting with patrons, putting on programs, and this stuff is just not interesting to her at all, right? So in that world, to prevent something unfortunate or something that John might not like. What we could do is set up a buy-sell agreement, funded one way or another, the different ways to fund it, where if something were to happen to me, right, my wife could sell her portion to John. That way there'd be an easy transition of ownership, right? Which makes it a lot easier than getting someone else having to step and make the decision for you. Slide. So, as we mentioned a couple times, for those of you that are looking to step into entrepreneurship, or those of you that are already owning a business, I mean, you have this little cartoon here, and I already kind of alluded to it. I could not be an accountant. I could not be an engineer. Obviously, I got out of calculus. I mean, just statistics instead, right? It's like, I was like, is no way I'm doing calculus. Meanwhile, my mom was like doing Cal 3 in the Philippines before she came here, right? So, you know, we have the cartoon here. Sorry, I have my true passions for making furniture sometimes. And we see this all too often. So, really, just to summarize these presentations, you need to have a written plan for the transition. Or, on the other side of things, if you're looking to purchase a business or get into entrepreneurship, I would take a look at the businesses that are there for you to explore, and I would see if their house is in order. I would see if they have a written agreement for any of this sort of transition or succession plan. Slide. Again, the same study here, this internal study did business owner perspective study in 2022. 233 businesses have not identified a successor to the business. 104 successors is nowhere they are going to choose a successor, and 1 out of every 5 business owners have not identified potential buyers. Right? So again, the point of the presentation is not to scare you, but it's to convince you to think long term, even just for 5 minutes, right? Maybe 50, maybe a little bit longer, maybe work with someone that helps you navigate and write down and commit to this process. Right? If there's one thing that I think we've heard over and over today, it's that we need to commit to these things that we want to use to improve our personal or business lives. Right? You can slide. So, when it comes to help preparing for the right successor, and I do want to spend some time here because I think it's something that we can take into the personal world as well. Right? You might as well have written up there, you know, the right beneficiary instead of the right successor, right? So you're looking at retirement accounts, you're looking at property, you want to make sure they're titled properly. Again, think of my example of the trust earlier with the $4 million that was going to go to the high school boyfriend, right? We want clear guidelines to who's going to become the leader, who will inherit the assets, what to determine the future leadership needs of the business, develop a successor development plan. A lot of times this transition plan is just X, Y, and Z people get equal interest in the company, right? Which if they're moving up from an employee to an ownership position, that doesn't always translate. I will give a personal example. I suck as an employee. I'm a terrible employee. Why? Because I had no ownership in the company, right? It's one of the reasons I transitioned into this line of work because I feel like I have complete ownership, right, of what's happening in my business when things go right, when things go wrong. When I was working at W2 for somebody else, things just didn't work out that way. Consequently, some people are fantastic employees, just like my wife. She does not like having difficult conversations with people. She's like, I can never fire him. I can never tell anyone how to manage their money, right? So you want to make sure that the people that you are nominating for that position, A, know, and B, can do the job well. And if not, you have a successor development plan, which is again just a written portion of the plan that helps these people develop, these people as they assume leadership or equity position in the company. Encourage utilizing a mentor. One of the biggest changes in my practice in my business in the past 2 years has been hiring a business coach. It's been night and day, right? So that's something that I encourage you all to consider at any point in your career, but especially if you either own a business or looking to move into it or are actively involved in some sort of transition plan. And slide. Okay, so we have 2 case studies here that came out of this perspective, the same business owner study, right? And I know it's going to sound made up, but it did happen. And I know none of you would do this, right? But it did happen, right? So in this first case study, the patriarch of the family decided that he was going to sell the business. Okay. He said, I only have 4 daughters. I don't know who I'm going to pass the business on to. So he passed the business on to their husbands. So the sons-in-law ended up splitting the business 25-25, 25-25, right? And in the story, we find that after a couple of years, after he had passed the business on to the sons-in-law, they were not necessarily the best choices. The daughters started saying something, clients started to drop. Eventually, the patriarch realized, oh wait, maybe I should have given to the people that grew up with the business, the people that knew the business, right? And again, it seems like a crazy example that it never do, right? It never passed over your house, right? You say that. But it did happen, right? And it's something to consider. Kind of more extreme than the second case study. Can we go to the second one? Slide. Should be case study 2. Okay, right. So this is, I was talking about buy-sell agreements earlier, and this is something I will sit on because this is another one of these crazy stories that come out of the financial planning world, right? So, let me go into this here. So, they talked, right? Business owner B, again, the Victoria Beal Laser Company, right? We talked about a buy-sell agreement, about transition planning if one of us were to pass early, right? We talked about it, and we talked about it. Someone told us, Tim Morris, our financial advisor, said, hey, you need to make sure that you fund this agreement with life insurance. Term's fine, whatever, right? So business owner A, business owner B bought the life insurance policies on the other one as a way of funding the transition, right? So if I were to pass, John would get the money for my half and pay it to my wife so he was to 100% control the company, right? Shake your heads yes or no if that's too fast. You did this and this. I'm not sure if I'm this, right? So basically, if one of us were to pass, right? If John or I were to pass, if I pass, he owns life insurance policy on me. He gets the proceeds from that sale of life insurance, and then he pays my wife for that half of the company. Does that make more sense? Right? Okay. So they purchased the life insurance on each other to fund the buy-sell agreement, but then they never entered into a written buy-sell agreement. So what happened? Business owner B died. Business owner A got the money and then kept it because there was no written agreement about what was supposed to happen. So they did everything except commit to paper what they wanted to do. And when business owner B's family found out, obviously they were pissed, right? But I mean, business owner A ended up keeping the money because there was no written plan, right? And there's even a court case here, Salter versus Dunn. Another crazy kind of story out of financial planning world. Slide. So I think really the point in the left half of this slide is if you are in that space where you're, either a business owner or transition, we really want to make sure, like I said earlier, every 3 years is typically where I tell people to review these agreements, right? It's a good policy just to review a lot of your estate planning documents and transition stuff every couple of years. 3 just happens to work, it's kind of in the middle of the study. And then the right side is how to fund the buy-sell. The most common way to do it with life insurance, but there are other ways. There's also disability buyout insurance. There's cash flow from the business for those that are really cash flow, kind of growth oriented. There are different ways to do it. Right? Next slide. Look at the top there. Go to resources for succession planning help. Family member. I mean, it makes sense, right? You trust these people, maybe you're running a business with them, maybe you gave birth to them, right? So it makes sense that you go to someone that you know that's well related to you, right? But, I don't really go to my parents for legal advice, right? If it's an estate planning thing, I call my estate planning attorney, right? If it's a tax thing, I call a CPA, right? Even though my dad's an accountant, right? Because we're inevitably going to get into a fight over this. So some of the folks we talk to, lawyers, CPAs, I mentioned here, are financial professional, right? Next slide. All right. So again, the point of the presentation, not to scare you into committing to something on paper right now, right? But the point is, if you are either transitioning into or out of entrepreneurship, or you're already in that world where you have something that you're looking to pass down, whether it be assets, financial, portfolio assets, property, a business, etc. You really want to know what the different options are. You really want to have things written down. You really want to make sure that things are communicated with everyone, things are funded properly, and then they're updated, like I said, every 3 years or so, right? So I tried to bend some of this to be a little bit more personal, right? Because obviously we don't have a room full of business owners who are looking to transition out of their business, right? And I do want to leave a couple minutes for questions. I think we're at the end here, are we not? Slide. Yep, that's it. So do we have any questions about any of those things? Yes?
For the buy-sell agreement?
Here, you take the mic. I know how it is. Thanks.
For the buy-sell agreement, you said that it's properly funded. How do you, as the business grows in valuation, how do you have that fully funded?
I love that question. We have a tool for that. You want to speak about that, or did you go?
Well, I mean, as the business value continues to grow, So there's a couple ways. I mean, obviously you reevaluate things. If you're using life insurance as a vehicle for a buy-sell agreement. We also have life insurance products that the death benefit grows over time and you build up cash. So all of those things can be, evaluated at death. So again, it's a complete planning process and exactly how you fund these things. That's just a very broad and basic answer to that question. But obviously there are techniques, because hopefully you'll be successful and your business will grow and grow in value. And you just may have to end up either using an additional vehicle or just buying more insurance at some point. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's not like you're playing the guessing game, right? Some people buy, if they don't want to commit to something more permanent, they buy just a fat term policy, hope they grow into it, right? But there are options where the value of the policy increases over time, right, as a way of funding this. And we don't have a preference for either one, just there are different vehicles that can try to preempt that growth as it happens, because it is something that, again, every 3 years we want to evaluate to see if we need to make an adjustment.
I do have one thing I want to share with everybody. So whether you're a business owner right now or not, and or just conversations with business owners and so forth, there are a couple of books that I would strongly recommend that you all give a shot and read these. One is called Finish Big. It's a fabulous book. It's that is more in tune with business owners. It's stories about business owners and a CPA's interaction and knowledge of these businesses and how things turned out. Just a couple of different situations, but Finish Big. And then a great book for everybody to read, business owners and everyone else. It's called The New Retirement Savings Time Bomb. Everyone needs to read this, quite frankly. If you're putting your money in a tax-deferred savings vehicle for retirement, you have to read this book. And I'm talking IRA, SEP, Simple, 401k, 403b, whatever it might be. It's a fabulous book, and it will open your eyes to maybe a new conversation surrounding retirement dollars and some things that you can do to make sure that time bomb doesn't blow you out. So, some great reading.
Fantastic. I don't think any mastermind or group session like this is complete without a few book recommendations. Appreciate it, Tim.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Are we good?
I'll just point out the opposite of one of your scenarios that's also blows up is business owners will go ahead and do their buy-sell agreement, they'll do their evaluation, and then they never fund it. So the other side of it is other business owner B dies, business owner A goes to business owner B's spouse and says, you're supposed to buy me out. How do they buy them out if they don't have that life insurance? And they have to buy them out at X amount because that's what the agreement said. So making sure you have it written down, signed, and funded. Because if you don't do that, you're totally missing.
And where do they have money? They have money in their retirement account.
Yeah.
So then they torch their retirement account, take a 10% early distribution penalty. I mean, it's just,
It's
not good. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Great job.
Yeah.
Great job. Good stuff.